political experts to get a closer look at all the races impacting the folks across the Midlands.
All right, Darce, thank you. Dave Wilson, our Republican strategist, Jim Felder, our Democrat strategist tonight. I know early in the evening, Jim, we thought that the Democratic race might be headed to a runoff between Cunningham and McLeod, but that's not the case. Cunningham victorious. And you believe that a little social media spat she got into with Todd Rutherford last week perhaps played a role in this. Explain that.
It did play a role in it. After that spat, it was all downhill for her. I started getting telephone calls from people who saying, "What is this all about? Why is she attacking him, or is he attacking her? They're serving the legislature together. They're both from Richland County. What's this all about?" And from that point on, it just seems like she began to slide. In the fact that she didn't have the kind of money to advertise as Cunningham did, that certainly did not help her.
Cunningham saying tonight this is basically young versus old, going after McMaster's age and his years in political office, Dave.
It's a lot of experience also that he's going to be going up against, because Henry McMaster has served in several roles in South Carolina government. And when you start taking a look at voter turnout, you're almost a 2-to-1 split of Republicans versus Democrats showing up in these primaries. I mean, we took a look at the numbers a little while ago, and more than with 83% of the precincts reporting, we had 48,000 people who had voted thus far. The guesstimate is going to be somewhere around 550,000, maybe. That's a 17% turnout. That means 1 out of 6 voters in South Carolina turned out, but they turned out 2-to-1 for Henry McMaster and the Republican races over the Democratic races. And so I think Henry McMaster, in a state like South Carolina, there's going to have to be a lot of contentious fighting going on in that old versus young debate that Joe Cunningham's already shot the first firing shots to be able to do so.
And Jim, voter turnout, why do you think it was so low?
Well, several things. Number one, people not knowing who the candidates were. They just didn't see enough. I don't know if we had a lens wide enough for everybody to get to the candidates. And there was not a lot of activity. It was whoever got their little area. But I still think we need to do more about advising the public of how the process works and who the candidates are and where you can get the information from other than through the candidates themselves. I still say that sample ballots is still a way to go, and of course they're available. But the older generation just can't access the technology to get the information, and so that doesn't help. On the other hand, Cunningham really tapped into the youth in his campaign, and it worked. It turned out. On the other hand, Mia was going after the older population, and that didn't work for her. They couldn't get him out.
All right, as we move forward now, what can we expect between now and November, especially in the race for governor? Are we going to see this thing get heated at times, guys?
I'm certain that it will get heated. Joe Cunningham already lobbed several firing salvos across the way there, across the bow, because he was basically making this an old versus young. You listen to his debate that he had when the Democrats debated last week. It was that old versus young. He is going to play the old versus young card, because he said tonight, I am now 40 years old, and that's how long Henry McMaster has been involved in politics.
There's some changes about it, the State House, though, as well. So briefly tell me what's going on there. A lot of faces who have been at the State House for a number of years could be not there when the legislature come back in January, right?
There were several key races. There were 33 contested incumbent races in the South Carolina House. Keep in mind, the Senate is not up for election this year, so you had 124 House seats that were up. That is nearly 1 out of 4 House seats that were challenged incumbents. That doesn't even count the folks who retired. There could easily be 20 to 25% of new membership coming into the House. You pair that with the fact that you've now got Speaker Merle Smith from Sumter, and you've got new leadership coming into play. And it's going to be very interesting to see how the State House dynamics start to play themselves out next year.
And quickly, Jim, he mentions new membership. You think that South Carolina voters are looking for some new leaders right now?
I think so. You reach a point where you say the incumbents are not doing enough. They're not talking about pocketbook issues that affect us. And as a result, say, well, let's throw the rascals out and try a new breed. And I see that happening this time around.
All right, we've been covering this throughout the evening. Dave, Jim, thank you so much for your time
Sure.
tonight and
Sure.
your expertise. We have much more.